You ever have one of those days where you just want some peace and quiet, maybe a few trees around you, a patch of water if you're lucky, and what you end up getting instead is a full-blown siege? Yeah, that was me. I was just hunting for a spot where I could hear myself think. Maybe throw a line in the water every now and then, read a book on the porch, nothing dramatic. But life had other plans. What I wound up with was a forgotten lake, an all-out war with an HOA president who could have moonlighted as a dictator, and a fight that would stretch into lawsuits, vandalism, arrests, and a revenge story that got built plank by stubborn plank. Let me tell you, this wasn't just property. It turned into the kind of battle you only read about, and somehow, I came out with the last laugh. So, how did a guy like me end up with a lake? Honestly, I was just poking around the edges of Bedford County, Virginia, scrolling through old real estate listings, not looking for anything crazy. There it was, unmaintained agricultural lot, approximate. 7 acres, includes private water feature, no HOA. You know how it is when something just clicks? That last bit practically leapt off the page at me. So I got in my truck and drove out, just to see it for myself. What I found was, well, let's call it a slice of heaven, mostly forgotten, definitely unclaimed, and pretty rough around the edges. The lake wasn't much, at least at first glance. Overgrown cattails, green algae hanging around the shallows like a bad shag carpet, and a rusted-out canoe left halfway up the hill, probably from the Nixon years. But underneath all that mess, I saw it, clear, spring-fed water, the kind that hadn't been touched by a McMansion runoff or some kid's leaky above-ground pool. The land curled around it, hugging it like an old friend, with sagging fences buried under vines. Just beyond that, neat rows of houses, every mailbox matching, siding so clean you could eat off it. Welcome to Maple Shores, the HOA capital of perfection. The kind of place where the grass is always exactly 2 inches high, and there's a committee for everything, including which shade of beige is acceptable. I didn't hesitate long. Sold my engineering firm a while back, spent years doing hydrology and flood modeling. So I had both the time and, thank God, the cash. Paid in full, no mortgage. The land came with an old barn falling in on itself, a couple stone markers half swallowed by weeds, but more importantly, a squeaky clean title, full riparian rights, and no easements to trip me up later. First 2 weeks, I lived out of a trailer under the trees, chainsaw roaring, brush clearing, working up a sweat tracing the old survey lines. And that's when I found it, the problem, that is, pulled a 1962 geodetic map from the county archives, the last one before any of the developments went up, and wouldn't you know it, the fences behind 5 houses in Maple Shores were stretched a good 6, maybe 10 feet past where they should have been. Some of these folks had swing sets, compost piles, even pergolas set up on what was clearly my buffer zone. Yeah, my property. But I didn't go knocking on doors or making a fuss. Not yet. Instead, I did what any decent survey geek would do. Hired an independent team, ran GPS lines, laid everything over the historical maps. Came up a perfect match. They've been creeping their yards onto my land for years. So I printed out the proof, laminated it. Old habits die hard. Tucked the docs into a waterproof binder under my makeshift tarp office, and got to work. That old lake had good bones, the kind you feel in your boots when you walk the shoreline. So I reinforced the banks, set up a floating dock, even built myself a little app to monitor the water level from my phone. Private, self-correcting, zero runoff, just the way nature intended. But then came the fence. At first, it was just privacy, 8-foot posts, nothing fancy. But by the time I hit the line bordering Maple Shores, I figured, might as well make a statement. Ran a surveyor's string right on the legal boundary, staked it every 6 feet, built the straightest, cleanest panels this side of a Home Depot ad. It ran right behind 5 backyard gardens. Suddenly, the folks who treated those woods as their personal park were getting antsy. I hadn't even finished hammering the last panel when I felt eyes on me. A fixed stare, not curiosity, but confrontation. I turn around, and there she is. Salmon tracksuit, sunglasses so big they could guide a plane in for landing, hair perfect, hands on hips, and an attitude that screamed committee chair for life. She looked at me like I'd just spray painted her dog. "You must be the new owner," she said. already sizing me up. That's right, I said, putting down my drill. Miles Hargrave. Karen Whitman, president of the Maple Shores Homeowners Association. Like she was announcing her rank in the Marines. We traded pleasantries. Well, she tried to, but her idea of polite was somewhere between a traffic stop and a tax audit. We've always considered this shoreline part of our community. Our kids fish here, we have picnics, it's been open for years. I just smiled. Yeah, that was your first mistake. She cocked her head like a golden retriever. Excuse me, this land's been private since 1926, I said. No easements. No access. You've been trespassing. I'm correcting it now. She didn't flinch. We'll see about that. And off she went, phone already out, probably speed dialing the local HOA battle hotline. I just went back to work, but that night I installed my first motion-triggered floodlight, just in case. 2 days later, she was back, clipboard in hand, yoga pants, the works. Mr. Hargrave, your fence violates Section 4 of our community guidelines, requiring consistency in external-facing fencing and prohibiting obstructions to shared landscape lines. I raised an eyebrow. I'm not in your community. She gave me the smile of a woman who's won arguments with herself in the mirror for years. Nevertheless, the aesthetic impact affects our residents, and the board has voted to issue a notice of violation. I had to laugh. Let me stop you right there. I don't pay your dues. I don't go to your meetings. Your rules don't apply to me. She kept pushing something about historic shoreline access and legal tension, but I just handed her packet back, dropped it right in my wheelbarrow, and told her, this is my lake, my land, no access, no easement, no community shoreline. Step over that line again, and I'll have you cited for trespass. Now, you'd think that'd be the end, right? Nope. Next morning, fence panel ripped halfway off, gate tagged with pig zone, and someone left a mountain of fast food trash on my dock. Cameras showed 2 hooded figures. Could have been teens, could have been Karen and her gang, who knows. One tripped into a patch of poison ivy, and I won't lie, that was the first smile I cracked in a while. I called the sheriff, filed a report, but let's just say he was about as helpful as a wet match. Probably just kids blowing off steam. Sure. Well, I want to document it, I said. He nodded. So I doubled down, added more lights, put up a surveyor's beacon that pinged my phone if anyone crossed the line. Next day, every resident in Maple Shores got an email about dangerous construction and illegal activity near our shoreline, urging them to call the Department of Environmental Quality. The kicker? They accused me, an actual environmental engineer, of polluting the lake. You can't make this stuff up. I stapled the email to my corkboard with fake news in red Sharpie, then called the county myself and invited an inspection. The guy they sent out, Cliff, looked like he'd survived 4 floods and 3 divorces. He poked around, checked my water quality reports, and finally just said, honestly, this is cleaner than any HOA lake I've ever seen. I grinned. Used to build dams. He nodded, like that explained everything. Within a week, the complaint was closed, but the war was just getting started. A few nights later, I found tire tracks cutting through my back lot, boot prints, fence posts yanked up and cut with a grinder, but not even stolen, just destroyed. Sheriff's deputy shows up, shakes his head. You think it's the HOA? He asks. I think it's someone who doesn't like fences between them and what they pretend is their lake, I reply. I wasn't holding my breath for help. So I set up a military-grade trail cam, and wouldn't you know it, caught Karen herself, hoodie up, flashlight, bolt cutters in hand, 2 men in tow, one wearing a Maple Shores security volunteer t-shirt. I sent the footage to my lawyer, Derek, former prosecutor, sharp as a tack. He grinned, said it was time to escalate, sent a cease and desist to the HOA, requested all their boundary docs and maps, put them on official notice. They showed up again, this time with their own plat map, trying to convince me to compromise by moving my fence 10 feet back so the community could use my shoreline. I told them they'd already been using land that wasn't theirs for years, and if they wanted court, well, I was more than ready. That's when the gloves came off. Friday night, I'm having a coffee on the porch, fog rolling over the lake, and then metal clanking in the woods. I go to check it out, and there's Karen and her board, tools in hand, halfway through pulling apart my fence. I walked up quiet, caught the mid-act. Karen tried to claim I was the trespasser. "You're building on HOA land," she yelled. I held up my phone, live call with the sheriff. Her face turned red as a stop sign. Cops arrived 10 minutes later. Karen tried her best speech, bylaws, buffer zones, whatever, but the deputy just looked at my pile of survey docs and shook his head. "Ma'am, you're trespassing. You've caused property damage. Step back, please." The best part? Deputy traced my survey line right through Karen's precious backyard garden. "You aware your fence is encroaching?" "It's always been that way," she protested. "Yeah," I said, "and it's been illegally on my land for 14 years. You should have seen the look on their faces." That night, Karen and her crew got themselves arrested for trespassing and property damage. My fence leaned a little, but I didn't mind. The next day, my lawyer filed suit: property damage, defamation, harassment, unlawful entry, and thanks to discovery, we pulled every HOA record on boundary claims for the last 15 years. Turns out, they'd known about the encroachment the whole time. They'd built sheds, ran irrigation, even installed a water intake line on my property. Old emails, meeting minutes, the works. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a land grab. The HOA fought back with newsletters, smear campaigns, even doctor maps. I was apparently the local ecosystem destroyer now. They called my dock illegal, accused me of dumping chemicals, altered property lines on flyers. But I'd already paid for a private audit, kept every permit, every drone shot, every water quality log. The state inspector cleared me in 3 days flat. Still, the trash, the vandalism, it kept coming. Karen even sent paddle boarders onto my lake, telling them it was community access. When I asked them to leave, they said, "That's not what Karen said." Right there, more evidence for my lawyer: systemic misrepresentation. We dug deeper and found emails where Karen bragged about controlling the lake by default, claiming, "If we use it long enough, it becomes ours." That's not just bold, that's illegal. Before we even made it to court, the story blew up. Local news memes: "She fought the fence won." Karen tried to doctor another map, this time using Photoshop. Unlucky for her, the county still had the original from 1962, and a forensics guy exposed her forgery in record time. Her own board started jumping ship, posting on forums, "We don't condone this." The last straw? Early Saturday, I caught 2 men in orange vests trying to take down my fence again, Karen barking orders from the sidelines. I walked right up, showed them the GPS coordinates, and told them to leave. Karen lost it, kicked my fence post, grabbed a rock, smashed it to pieces on camera again. Deputies arrested her for vandalism and trespass. The county issued a report. The HOA had no claim to my property. The board threw Karen under the bus, begged for a private resolution. I ignored them. With my new lawyer, we filed 3 claims: property damage, defamation, and 14 years of unauthorized use. We subpoenaed both the digital forgeries and the original records. County inspection confirmed over 3,000 square feet of my land misused, permanent structures built, dues collected off my lakefront. Karen panicked, tried forging a decades-old easement, signed by a guy who died 7 years before the date on the document. You can guess how that ended. Trial lasted 3 days. Karen showed up dressed like a senator's wife, but the jury saw right through it. My lawyer rolled out the maps, the overlays, the drone scans, the videos, the original deed, everything. By the end, the verdict came down, every single claim in my favor. $420,000 in damages and legal fees, every illegal structure removed, and a formal apology mailed to all residents. Karen? She got referred to the DA for fraud and perjury. The sheriff took her out in cuffs right in the courthouse lobby. 6 years, that's what she ended up with: fraud, destruction, false claims. Her mugshot wound up on the front page, next to the headline, "HOA president loses it all over a fence, ends up behind one." I laughed. Hell, I laughed hard. Week later, an HOA board member knocked on my door with a bottle of wine and an apology. I declined the wine, but took the moment. I'm not here to make enemies. Just don't steal from me and call it a favor. After all that, I hired a crew, rebuilt my fence, extended it exactly 400 feet along the true line, cut right through Karen's old backyard. Hung a big sign, private lake. No trespassing. Access revoked. I kept my dock, my guest house, and the silence I'd been chasing from start. They kept their newsletters and wounded pride. For the first time in years, that lake was really mine. Now, you tell me, where do you draw the line? What would you have done if someone tried to take what was yours, inch by inch, year after year? Drop a comment, share your own stories, or just tell me, was justice served, or did I go too far? Either way, hit like, hit subscribe, and let's hear what you think about right, wrong, and what you'd do if the fence was yours.